Well, welcome to another session. I would like to speak today specifically on what I've labeled as seven basic um, steps, seven basic keys to having a successful relationship. I should perhaps start by making it very clear that generally speaking, I do not put all relationships into the same category for a number of reasons. I like to use the analogy of a marketplace when I talk about intersexual dynamics. The marketplace is something that both you and I can relate to. We understand marketplaces from the local marketplace, the car marketplace, the finance marketplace. The economy itself is a combination of several marketplaces. And that means that in every marketplace, the intent, the outcomes, the motivations of the people in that marketplace will vary. When it comes to inter-relationships and intra-relationships, what I connect together and I call intersexual dynamics, there are two marketplaces that exist. The first marketplace is the dating marketplace. The second is what I call the relationship or the marriage marketplace. In the dating marketplace, the requirements are more straightforward because people are not playing the long game. They're often playing the short to medium game, and therefore their needs and the bucket list of what is necessary for that to work is quite small. What I am referring to today is the relationship marketplace, the marriage marketplace, the cohabitation, the partnership marketplace, and how you as an individual, you can think about how in your personal circumstances, and here's an assumption that I am having to contend with. I am assuming that this is something that you want, that you've come to the point where you're ready for a relationship, and therefore you're happy and willing to pay the price. Or you are in a relationship and you want to make the best out of that opportunity and make it successful. So, assuming that you are, and you and I have similar intentions, then I hope these seven guidelines, seven keys, seven recommendations, and provide you with some guidance. Now, the first, and this is in no chronological order, the first thing to say before I go into the seven items, I am specifically speaking to those in the West, primarily. I'm talking about modern women and modern men. A lot of the things I will share will not apply to people who are not classified or do not classify themselves as modern men or modern women. The more traditional men and traditional women will relate to some of the things that I am about to share, but also they will be aware of how what I'm sharing is not something new. In the West, we've moved so far away from our traditional core foundations, and therefore this is just a reminder of some of the ingredients we need to still make good on our relationships. Now, the first is that you need to have a disciplined and a disconnected presence from social media. Social media has done so much good. It's connected us so easily. Many years ago, and many young people may not recognize this, but we used to talk about 6 degrees of separation. That you were connected to someone somewhere in the world, and it was separated by 6 degrees. You knew someone, who 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 knew the person you were hoping to get to. And it did not have to be someone in the same geographical location. Today, with social media, we have 1 degree of separation. In one click, I can connect to whosoever I want to. And that means we've been, I guess, sensationalized with so much information, so much access, so much so that the world is now a stage for comparing your partner, the person you are in a relationship with the entire world. And no one can stand up to such standards, to be constantly compared, analyzed, vilified, ridiculed to someone else, both implicitly and explicitly. It's difficult to have all of that pressure and still have a successful relationship. So the first key to building a successful relationship as a modern man or woman is you have to be disconnected and certainly not addicted to social media. Every day on social media, you always see pictures, videos of people all over the world living their lives, some of which are false, reaching out to you, some of which have no pure intentions. And as a woman, particularly, men will always reach out to you. They like what they see. Most men are normally proposing sex in the guise of a relationship. As a woman, you have to know what motivates men. Now, as a man, you have access to so many women, often younger women, exotic-looking women, attractive women, dressed in several attires, sometimes very skimpily, sometimes very provocative, and sometimes very alluring. And it becomes hard, recognizing that we are visual, it becomes hard not to compare those women to the woman in your life. Now, the second thing you need is a disciplined imagination. Imagination is everything. It's the preview to life's coming attractions. Now, with our imaginations, we can dream, we can create, we can build empires in our mind. We can look to the future, draw that future into the present, and with our hard work and choices, we can move ourselves towards that future, even though that future does not exist. The resultant of which we bring to the world the future that we saw in our mind into reality. With our imagination, we can also destroy. We can pull down all the things we care about and all the things we love. Your imagination is like a tool. It uses the information you feed it. A disciplined imagination is simply a way of restricting yourself from playing what I call the what if scenario. The grass is always greener on the other side. You need your imagination to get to that point. The girl next door is very attractive and will make a very nice lay. You need your imagination to do that. I saw a very handsome man at the supermarket on Instagram, and he's proposing to me. You need your imagination to get you to that place. Your imagination plays a role, an important role. It's important to understand that your imagination is like a horse, but a horse is untrained, undisciplined, and quite ruly. You have to restrain the horse. You have to discipline the horse. You have to train the horse so that the horse knows what is expected of it. You want the horse to be free and express its personality, but you do not want that horse to kill you. You want to train the horse so that the horse understands its purpose, its function, and most importantly, the limitations and the boundaries of the relationship. It's important to understand the boundaries make a very, very, very significant and play a very significant role in successful relationship. Think about it like a sports game. There are rules. There's a boundary. Within that boundary, you allow yourself to apply certain methods, adhere to certain standards, and allow yourself, I guess, opportunities to explore yourself within that boundary. The idea of coloring outside of the boundary applies for creative imaginations and creating things. In relationships, the less restrictive you are about your imagination and the more rigid you are about your boundaries, the more successful the relationship will last. Now, this goes against the liberal perspective, the perspective that has been put forward over the past 50 years, which suggests that you need to be less boundaried in your relationships. It's such idiotic positions that have created all of societal decays. People saying, well, I know we're married, but maybe we should explore options. Maybe we should color outside of the lines. Maybe we should experiment and test and try and allow ourselves not to be too rigid. It always begins with good intentions. We know that the road to hell is also paved with good intentions. We don't judge propositions by their intentions, we judge based on their outcomes. In almost every scenario, the same people who started with having less boundaries, allowing themselves to be colorful outside of the rigidity of the boundaries, allowing themselves to get into entanglement, always causes over the long term. In the short term, it's a lot of fun. It's exciting. You feel as though you're a new person. You feel as though you've met and you're with another person. The same boundaries that protect you and keep the enemy from coming through would also allow you in several ways, will allow you to perhaps stay within the confines of what could be quite boring, but long term, it safeguards you. Once you take down the boundaries, the enemies can come. The enemy becomes the regular visitor at the gate. Therefore, the protection that the two parties once had disappears. Now, this brings me to item number 4, or number 3, I should say. So the first thing you need is a disciplined presence on social media. You need to be disconnected with social media. The second is a disciplined imagination. The third is a dedicated set of precepts. Those precepts have to be founded on the right foundations of morals, values, ethics, codes of conduct, even a mission statement, a set of expectation of who we are and what we are. When two people come together, what you have is the coming together of two different histories, two different traditions, two different experiences, two different imaginations, two different goals and dreams. The union of both has to work. The success of that union usually depends on the foundation upon which the entire structure is built. Now, whether your precepts and your morals and your values and your ethics and your decorum, mannerisms, behavior, lifestyle, whether that is founded on theology or science, whether it's founded on nothing, but providing those precepts are long-lasting and have within itself a structure of integrity, a structure of character, long-term thinking, sacrifice, hard work, the success rate of that foundation becomes much higher. If two people come into a relationship and one person has a history of incest, abuse, violence, no morals, no ethics, and they pair bond with someone with the opposite. The saying, how can two walk together except they agree, becomes even more apparent. You need to be equally yoked. So having the foundation of the right morals is predicated on being equally yoked, having similarity, having more in common than you have against each other. Now, number 4 is an appetite that is satiable, a satiable appetite. The word contentedness, or being contented, comes to your mind. Today, what we find is that by 18, young people have been exposed to so much. By 25, they've been exposed to so much more. They've had so much experience, emotionally, sexually, physically, so much so that their appetites are insatiable. There's always a thirst for more, a longing for more, because they started the journey on the wrong foot. And therefore, by the time the relationship begins, one party has this insatiable appetite and they will never be contented. The word contented is something we don't hear a lot, because in modern society today, we are told to express ourselves, shoot for the stars, shoot for the moon, take risks, be free. We're told to forget what I call the key watch words, shame. We're told to ignore such words as being something of the past. We've actually even been encouraged to disregard the relationship that our choices have with our outcomes. We've been told there are no consequences, there are no costs, there are no constraints, there are no trade-offs. There is only what you can dream about and what you want to have. And all of that is not true. The choices we make as individuals all come with costs. They come with constraints and they come with consequences. The result of which is that we will have to make a trade-off once we make a choice. We don't get to have it all. Now this brings me to number 5, which is no expectations. If one was to ask me what is the key to having a successful marriage, a successful relationship, a successful life, a relationship with people, whether that be sexual or asexual. The key is low expectations. Expectations is the thing or the ingredient that robs most relationships of their longevity. We start up with high expectations of people, of ourselves. And wherever there are expectations, there will always be change, because we're human beings and we're playing this game in the world that is not controlled, for which the rules are not encoded into the script. Things will happen. The one constant in life is change. And therefore, if your expectations are too rigid, and if change is a constant, then you're surely going to be disappointed. You're going to be disappointed. Expectations breed disappointments. Disappointments, sustained over a long period of time, can lead to the dissolution of the relationship, where two people say, we may as well just get a divorce. Let's dissolve this business. Let's dissolve this partnership. Let's dissolve this institution. Let's dissolve our promises and let's go our separate ways. We go back to why it all began. Usually high expectations or rigid expectations. Low expectations means that the possibility of disappointment is minimized. It's a way of protecting both parties. You start off low and you don't place any undue burden on the other people. Now this brings me to number 6, a controversial one, but a one that I know has a strong correlation with the topic, your body count. Now I have done several sessions on the body count conversation. I explain very carefully and very candidly why your body count matters, but particularly why it's more important on the woman's side than it is on the man's side. I go into some detail in several other videos. You're more than welcome to refer to such conversations because I will not have the time to go through everything today. But let me leave you with the following, just to give you an idea about why your body count plays a huge role. If you take everything that I have shared so far, one of the things that stands, or what we call, if you were to plot what we call a scatter diagram, the best line fit, what connects all the various items I've spoken to you about, is the fact that you have an individual, sometimes two individuals, like making an omelette. An omelette is only as good as the eggs used to make an omelette. If you have two eggs and one is rotten and the other is, let's say, free range, it doesn't matter how good a quality the free range is. The final outcome of the two eggs being used to make an omelette will be a disaster. The same thing applies with human beings in relationships. The higher your body count, both as a man and as a woman, there is an inverse correlation between high body count and inverse correlation. So as your body count increases, the likelihood of a successful, stable relationship decreases. And it doesn't, and it should not, come as a surprise for a number of reasons. We know that women inherently are emotional creatures. The more a woman is exposed to several lovers, the more she's exposed to several sexual encounters, the more she's equally yoked with several other people. It's a spiritual yoking. The more she's had multiple partners, the higher the likelihood of all the issues that arise from that pathway. Taking the pill, which is immunosuppressive, it also has negative implications in terms of being high risk in promoting tendencies that doctors say carcinogenic. The more you're more open sexually, the more you're exposed to risks, both your body, both your emotions, which makes pair bonding much harder for women. For men, we're slightly different. Sex is a physical activity for men. Like going to a urinal and urinating, sex is no different for men. We can have sex without emotion. We mostly have sex without emotion. We're like beasts in that manner. We're closest to our animal kingdom from a sexual perspective for men. We can have multiple sexual partners and not be emotionally connected to any of them. However, whilst we are not emotional as women with regards to sexual intercourse and sexual exploitation, the one thing that is consistent between both sexes is that the more you explore, the more your expectation increases, the more the level of disappointment you will experience increases in one person. If I, as a man, I have had multiple women, it would mean that I've had multiple experiences, multiple pleasures, multiple opportunities to explore outside of the boundaries. This would also mean that I have so much experience that if I meet someone who is more reserved, who, for example, could be a virgin, there will be disappointments that I would feel in certain areas because I've allowed my imagination and my experiences to go beyond what would be normal. Therefore, I would have high expectations, which would lead to disappointments, which could potentially lead me to exploring outside of the boundaries of our relationship. In the long run, that has negative consequences. But more importantly, the question is, how do I make the lady in the relationship feel? If she feels that she has to keep competing with ghosts of prior girlfriends, it affects her self-esteem, her self-confidence, her self-assurance, her self-worth, her self-identity, because every day she's having to conform to someone else. She's having to play a role of someone that she is not, simply to satisfy my needs. So, although women and the experience of a high body count on women has a different consequence on women, you have a similarity on men. So my perspective has always been the same. If you want to have a successful relationship, successful marriage, both parties need to have lower body counts. Now, I do not agree with the myth that you need to know what you like. For a start, the only way you can say that, and I have heard people say, well, sex is very important to me. I like good sex. Well, that means you've had so much sex that you know the difference between good and bad. If both parties were virgins, then the standard at the start of the relationship, once they've had sex, would be that sex is great. You started with greatness. You started with something so good, you want more, and then you build, and then you build. But the starting point will not be way down and so low. The only way you can start off with something being low or being underwhelmed, unimpressed, is when you've explored so much that your expectation is so high your level of fulfillment is so high that it takes a porn star to satisfy you, a male or female. And that pressure that most people feel in relationships is way unnecessary and just too high. A woman is expected to be the lover, the homemaker. She's expected to be the mother, the one who nourishes and sustains the family. And then she's expected to be a porn star in bed. Now, all of those are attributes that are appealing to most people. The point being, if you set expectations too high, the likelihood of failure is likely to be much more painful than you may have expected. Now, number 7, and the final, is another controversial one, but this even predates you as the person. Now, let me say I'm speaking to you, a young woman who is 25, and a young man who is 29. There are things that occurred before you became emancipated. One of such things would have been the quality of the people who were your parents and the relationship they had. You have no control over that, but it plays a huge role subconsciously in your successful relationship or your failed relationship. Number 7 is the heritage of coming from a 2-parent family, but with specific characteristics. 2-parent family with traditional gender roles, with a dominant, and dominance by dominant I'm saying present, someone who is present, a dominant, expressive, strong father, masculine frame, with a feminine mother, a loving, expressive, feminine mother. What you then get is 2 specific archetypes of what relationships should look like. Each bringing unique ingredients, each depending on each other, which is why I said traditional family gender roles, that one party does not feel that they are completely independent and do not need the other party. And the other party believes that they are completely dependent on the other party. So what you have is a symbiotic relationship where both of them need each other and they work together for the longevity of both parties and the family. If you've come from such a family, the likelihood of having a good relationship is higher because you've been exposed, say for 18 years, to not just words and directions, but you've actually got to witness and observe what love should be, what caring should be, what being attentive to another person's need should be, what sacrifice means, what patience, tolerance, hard work should be. You would have observed how a family should be run and built. Now, you may not have been party to the bedroom conversations and activities, but outside of the bedroom, you would have seen your parents be there for each other for many, many, many years. And so you have a foundation, a role model, something to emulate. We know, however, that most families are not gifted with such opportunities to have a loving 2-parent family. Therefore, the second, what I think in hierarchical terms would be important, would be having a father or being raised by a father who was loving, caring, kind, courageous, but who had a masculine frame. The more you're raised by a father, the more you're likely, irrespective of whether you're male or female, the more you are likely to be closer to a 2-parent family in your overall makeup than if you were raised by a single mother. Now, a single mother is the third. slightly undesirable for a number of reasons. I have no intentions of getting into the reasons. And then after single mothers is same-sex couples, loving as they may be. The point of what I've just shown you here is a hierarchy of a family structure and the importance of saying all families are not the same. A two-parent loving family with traditional gender roles with a masculine frame and a feminine mother is more superior in providing the right foundations than a two-parent family with a weak beta male, feminine man, simp, with a strong masculine woman, dominant woman, aggressive. You can't compare both, although both are two-parent families. A child raised into a single-parent family, all single-parent families are not the same. A single mother as the main breadwinner and as the main guardian raising the kids will do poorly over the long term than if the kids were raised by a single father. The data, the statistics is profoundly settled on this issue. Men make better parents if in single parent families than women make better parents. The reason is very simple. Love does not get the job done. There's a correlation, and a very high correlation, between fathers who are masculine in their frame. I should have said this. The single parent masculine father has to be an archetype of a masculine frame, assertive, dominant, loving, caring, having structure. Fathers in the house who have a masculine frame, who assert those foundational beliefs and who set the vision for the family and for the kids, who take the opportunity to play with their kids, rough and tumble play, rough house their kids. The data shows that there's a higher probability that the men, the boys, in math and in IQ will do 30% better than when the father does not play with the kids. Same for women, but even more so. Men who are dominant in their archetype and present, though loving, keep young boys because they introduce what we call delayed gratification, which is the first ingredient for long-term success. They introduce structure, which all men and young women need to build and to have a successful life. They introduce a vision of what the future could be. They introduce discipline, boundaries. All of those play a huge part in ensuring that the individuals are successful for 2 or 3 reasons. The first being that when you plot the reasons why people are successful, it comes down to conscientiousness and intelligence. Being dutiful plays a role, but at the core, it's your intelligence and how hardworking you are. Being placed on a framework of discipline, structure, delayed gratification by father, but also someone who explains the reasons, ensures that whilst in the short term, your emotional needs, perhaps you feel as a child, that father is a taskmaster. In the long run, long-term benefits far outweighs the love mother would have given you just to make you feel good in the short term, but which is detrimental to you in the long term. But this is not a bash mummy or bash daddy conversation. I wanted to provide you with 7 key ingredients, 7 keys to how you can build a successful relationship. I would hope that the 7 items that I have shared with you have been helpful. And let me start by recommending that perhaps you consolidate the 7 items, just put it down on a piece of paper and look at that list for a number of days and ponder on that list. And if you are in a relationship, ask yourself the question, is there anything I can do to ensure that this relationship I have blossoms? Could I use, or are there any aspects of this list that is particularly absent? from my relationship, and how can I, knowing what I know now, bring into my relationship certain changed behaviors to ensure that the relationship thrives. If any of the items on the list are of value to you, then apply them. And I'm sure that in the long term, with dedication, with hard work, with sacrifice, you would find that although these ingredients do not make up all of what you need, they are useful first steps to success in relationships.